Welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Why, hey there, and welcome to episode 111 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Thank you, as always, for lending me your ears today. I know you have lots of choices out there, and I really do appreciate you making the Small Business Made Simple podcast one of your choices. If you're a first-time listener, then hey, welcome. If you're back, then hey, welcome back. I am, of course, the host, Jen Donovan, marketing thought leader, digital strategist, and coach for small businesses, and pretty much just a all-round small business lover with one business goal in mind. And my business goal is to make you make marketing a priority in your business, not as sometimes activity that you might do, or when I have time, or this thing that you just think, oh, I haven't marketed for a little while, I need to market. No, we need to make marketing a priority, because if you want to grow your business, then marketing is what you need to do. I know that it's not easy and it sounds simple, but my promise to you through this podcast is we are going to make it a little bit simpler for you. Today on the podcast, I have a really special guest. Her name is Michelle Brown, and she owns Mixed Media Art. She's gone from building aeroplanes, like building jumbo aeroplanes and using her engineering skills there, to being a paper art lover and running art events and craft events, and pretty much doing a whole pivot when it comes to COVID of 2020 as well. It's a fabulous conversation, and really, whether or not you have an art business or an art bone in your body, like I don't seem to have, or even a product-based business, retail business, it doesn't matter. Michelle's marketing and social media and email tips that you will hear through this interview, they're for everyone. And they're, like I've been talking about a lot lately, they're a really great nudge. Confucius says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And that's why we need to keep hearing these little tiny subtle things over and over and over again, because eventually we are going to be ready to hear them and we are going to be able to implement them into our business. It's always great to hear some of the same marketing strategies done and engaged with in a different way in different industries. So that's why I was a little bit excited to have Michelle on the podcast. I don't have a crafty bone in my body, I have to say, so I am in awe of Michelle's and her whole community's talents, and I know that for sure. This is a great little listen, so grab yourself a drink and maybe even a bicky and tune in as Michelle and I chat business, craft, marketing, social media, and all the other things in between. Michelle, I'm super excited to have you on the podcast today to come and talk to us about growing a business, about doing events, and about craft. So welcome.
Oh, Jen, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, cool. So, Michelle, we know each other through Jules, who has She's the Boss, which is a fantastic Facebook group. Anyone who is the boss, maybe you should go and join that Facebook group. But for those of my audience who perhaps don't know you, could you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm based in the southeast of Melbourne, and I'm the creative director of two main businesses. The first one is From Picture to Page and Beyond Paper Craft Shows, and we used to hold, or we will again next year, 5 events across Victoria where they're retail shows. So our retailers come along and show off their craft products and hold demonstrations and classes for our retailers. And then my other one is actually the retail show as well. So I have a retail business that then exhibits at the shows.
Yeah, okay. So full disclosure that we've chatted about this before we've pressed record. I don't have a crafty bone in my body, so I'm seriously envious of anyone who's talented with craft. What's your favourite craft?
So what we specialise in what we call mixed media art. So it's a combination of collage, using acrylic paints, creating our own papers, bookmaking, art journaling. So yeah, it kind of has its own little sort of combination of scrapbooking, a little bit of card making, stamping, colouring. It all kind of comes together in a bit of a mess sometimes.
Yeah. So were you a creative person as a child?
Oh, definitely. My father was a printer and we always had paper at
Ah,
home. So I can remember always, trying to do drawings and making my own cards. And my mother was I come from a long line of crafters. So my mother was a sewer and a knitter. My grandmother on my mother's side was a dressmaker. On my father's side, sort of sewers and knitters as well. But I don't really sew or knit, but much more paper crafts. So the great thing about sort of the paper crafts we do is that you don't have to be able to draw. You can do stamping and you can download images and you can collage. So it's a really good way of being creative without having to worry about that whole drawing side of it.
yeah. Okay. So how did you end up running events and owning your own craft business? Like, is that something you did when you left school, or how did it all come about?
Well, when I left school, I headed off to engineering school and went and made aeroplanes for 18 years with Hawker de Havilland, that then became part of Boeing, which is still here
Wow,
in
that's
Melbourne.
different.
It was quite a corporate job. And then I separated from there 2008, 2009. Great place to be because I had paid maternity leave. So I stayed there while I had my two children. So that
Mhm.
worked well. And then when I left, I did a little bit of engineering consulting, which I still do, but I was looking for sort of something else and creating more of an online business. And I found this course called the 30-day challenge, or how to build a website and make your first dollar online in 30 days. So that led me through the process of looking at keywords and creating a website. And it kept coming back to this mixed media. And while I didn't really want to turn my passion into a business, I just knew I knew so much about it and I could write about it and I could take photos and I could do videos. So it sort of led down that path. And then I was doing regular demonstrations. This was a bit before video, sort of early 2010, 2011, and doing instructions and having downloads, which led me to write my own book, which I self-published through Amazon Publishing.
Wow.
And that then, led me into the American craft industry and then starting to import products as well. So it was a chance of still having that website that had sort of a design team around it, very much a North American focus for what we were doing,
Hmm.
but then doing that retail side as well, which is very much, localized here in Melbourne, because we didn't have a website until March this year to sell our products from. So we had a blog style website, but
Yep.
we didn't have an e-commerce site until March this year. So it's been a
Yeah.
big
And
year.
was that always in the plan, or was that that C word that we try not to mention these days? Did it bring it on a lot quicker, or
Look,
was it always in the plan for
yeah,
March?
it was no, not for March. It was sort of always in the background. We'd had a really good point of sale system that sort of had an e-commerce side, but there was that opportunity. They were changing platforms and it needed to go somewhere anyway. So we were kind of looking at Shopify as an e-commerce platform anyway. And like we said, when we suddenly realized that we wouldn't be holding shows, that we eventually in Melbourne couldn't even have our retail space open, and it needed to go online, then thankfully it wasn't too much of a task to get that up and running.
Yeah, right. So very interesting. So I really like to chat to you just on one side of your business for a start, which is the event side, because I know there is quite a few people in my audience who would like to run events, whether it's simply a women in business event or whether it is more like a showcasing of what they do or getting other people on board and sort of directing a group of people. But what have you learned? What are the sort of rules around running events, or what are some of the pitfalls that you can share with us?
Yeah, well, I certainly don't have an event background. So I guess I kind of fell into it, but I figured I could organize stuff. And actually,
Yeah.
that's my favorite part of
But I
it, is
think
getting
that's
the
a lot
calendar
of
out and
us. We
organizing.
don't have an events background, but we're kind of like, we know communities and
Yep.
collectively you can have a better event than perhaps what you can by yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And we knew, like, I know as a crafter, which events that I like to go to, what I liked about them, what I didn't like. And they're the feeling that we're trying to create in our own craft shows. So I did take on an existing business. So that had a little bit of, know-how behind it, the contacts with venues. And then I learned fairly quickly that you kind of just got to put on your big girl pants and go for it. So as we were expanding, it's about knowing the areas. So we do some regional shows as well as metropolitan Melbourne. So finding people in those areas that can guide us towards finding the venue that makes sense, having conversations with people about that, about what kind of facilities you need. So it became evident quite quickly. It's really hard to find large event spaces in Melbourne. We need like more than 500 square meters, and quite a few of those kind of have pokies venues attached. So it became evident really early that we had to make a decision about sort of what our values were around the show. And I was really keen not to have it anywhere near a pokies venue. They offered us, gaming vouchers and all sorts of things for our retailers, but it's like, that's really not what we're about.
Yeah.
So when you run an event, like you said, you need to really think about who your audience is. And for our craft shows, I have two main customers. There's our retailers, which are the small businesses that come along and show off their craft supplies. And then there's the crafters as well. So we're really looking for a venue that suits both. But if you sort of do a Venn diagram of what each of them want out of a craft show, there's not a lot of overlap. Our craft retailers want lots of crafters spending lots of money. Our crafters want lots of retailers, but not a lot of other crafters. so it's hard to get, and also the retailers kind of don't want any other retailers to some degree. So it's really having that right balance of retailers, making sure we're meeting their expectations as far as getting into a venue, getting out, setting up, what services we supply, how we advertise it, how we support them. A lot of our businesses are really small businesses, very much women-led as well. So we do a lot of education around, how we promote on social media, images to put out through their newsletters, how to use hashtags, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then for our crafters, it's very much, like we said, to provide the best combination of retailers that we can, but also getting as many people as we can along within reason, that supports the venue, because we don't want a venue that's too crowded. As we know, as women get to a certain age, we all get a little bit warmer. So we need to make sure we've got good air conditioning in our venues. We always try and have lots of seating so people can, sit down and sort out their purchases, catch up with friends, an area where we've got some level of catering so you can just have a bit of a bite to eat and catch up with people. Because it really is about building that crafting community. It's not like going to a shopping centre where you sort of, it's all very impersonal. It really is a community both for the retailers and for the crafters as well. So people come along not just to see the craft supplies and not just to buy them, but to watch the demonstrations, to do classes, to catch up with friends. Sometimes you sort of think, well, a lot of these retailers don't have bricks and mortar stores anymore, but when they did, it's like, you could just drive around to them and see them all. But Melbourne's a really large city these days, and the traffic's really bad. So even me just, going around and handing out flyers, it would take like 3 days. I'd have to do, one direction one day and the other direction. So this is a way of getting all the retailers together, which really helps the crafters. And this way the crafters can meet their friends there. They can do some classes. They can have a look at what they want to buy. We always encourage our crafters to go back and check what they bought at the last show. And if they've got anything that doesn't work or they can't remember how it was supposed to work, come back and talk to the retailers again as well. Because sometimes we get really overwhelmed by all the pretty colours and all the things happening. And you think, that'd be great, I want to buy that. And you get it home and you go, I kind of don't remember how it works.
Yeah.
So we really encourage people, if we've got any problems, to get in touch with me or back in touch with the retailers, because that's what, overseas online businesses can't do, is provide that customer support.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like me with AppSumo. Oh, I need that app. And then it's just like, why did I buy that app? What's that app supposed to do? Yes. Do you have any restrictions around competitiveness? So like when you're looking at the retailers, do you have any restrictions of only one person can do this or one person can do that, or, where you situate them in that? Like, is that something that you consider when you're running your events?
Yeah, it is. Thankfully, it's not too much of a problem in that in Melbourne and the bricks and mortar stores or the local stores in Melbourne, we very much need to find our own niche, because we know Melbourne's a fairly small, market as far as crafting goes. So we all kind of specialise in slightly different things.
Okay.
Where it becomes challenging is there is 5 or 6 direct selling or multi-level marketing companies in the craft space. And our rules around that for our in-person shows is usually only one of each brand, and pretty much each show has its own person or consultant or whatever their term is for that company that represents them, and usually it's quite competitive. So there'll always be someone else popping up saying, I wonder if I can come to that show, and I'll always say, look, this is the person I'll offer it to first. If for some reason they can't make it, then we can look at offering it more wider. Sometimes two might come along, and sometimes they sort of partner up. But I really try not to get caught up in the politics of these companies because it gets very political really quickly.
Yeah, I think so. But it's something to consider, isn't it? Like, if you're putting on an event that, you're at the head of this. And so you want to create an experience where people want to come back. So if they get there and they feel like, every man and their dog who's their competitor is there, then they're less likely to want to come back. But it also filters down from that end user or that end customer who's coming through the door, perhaps gets a little bit overwhelmed with who to buy what from because, the same thing's there 4 or 5 times.
And like I said, we don't see too much of that, or where we do, like there's one or two that are larger stores, and some of them do import their own products under their own brand name, and they then sell to some of the other stores. But we know that if we were going to that show and they're there, that we wouldn't take along that product. So we just would choose not to do that because we know that company is going to be able to supply it at a much cheaper price than we would. And people will flock to them because they're there selling their things a lot cheaper than we would be able to do it. So it's sort of, like I said, there's a little bit of overlap, but it tends to work out well. We all tend to sort of specialize in different things. Each market, each show sort of has its own flavor as well. So some are a bit more scrapbooking, some are a bit more card making, some are a bit more mixed media. And they're all slightly different, and they all have their own feel about them.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. I love that. I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Okay.
You've talked a couple of times about email, how I know we spoke off air before and you were saying how you'd sent out particular things to your database. How important is email and that as a marketing strategy for yourself in your business, like keeping in contact with everybody?
Yeah, look, it's really important in the way that our challenge, I think, as small businesses is there are so many platforms, the social media platforms are so easy to access and so easy to gather followers. But what we always need to remember is that we don't own those platforms. And I'm sure we've all been in business groups where we see, someone's Facebook account's been hacked or it's been cloned or this has happened or they've been shut down. And so the email list is the way of having something that's yours, regardless of, what happens and as the rules change on those platforms. Even, platforms like Etsy, which a lot of the smaller crafters sell on, they've been changing their rules so much lately. So by having that email list, it gives you that reach straight out to your community. And look, I don't send out regular emails until a show comes up. And then it's my way of reaching out directly to my retailers. So we have one big list that has all the retailers on it, and then I segment them for each show. And then what we do heading into each show, I will offer the same place to the retailers that were there previously first up, and they get a couple of days to let me know if they're interested or not, or if something else has come up. And then we will then offer that then to the rest of the retail list to see who's interested and if people want to move around. So that sort of gives us a fair bit of consistency between shows. But having said that, you never know. Everything sort of flows and ebbs, and there's been a few businesses that close or can't make that show. So it always does kind of evolve, but that sort of works well on the retail list. I completely control that retail list. It's not, there's not a form anywhere on a website that people can sign up to. So I know that it sort of doesn't have my competitors on it.
Yep.
But whereas the general email list, you can sign up to that on our website. And again, it's a really good way of communicating. Again, because our demographic tends to be older women, there is some of them that apparently aren't on Facebook. Who'd have thought? Definitely not me. I spend way too much time on Facebook. So it's good to be able to reach them. We did also have a physical mailing list, a postal list. This year was the first year that I didn't spend the $1,000 to send out all of the flyers. Look, and we may have lost some people with that. But it was one of those things where it was just very time consuming, very stressful and very expensive to send out physical mail. And especially then when you're getting, a couple of hundred back. I had to laugh. Even just this week, a letter turned up. So we didn't send out any for 2020. We sent out the 2019 one. And I got a return to sender from like 18 months ago.
Oh, my goodness.
Like, okay, there you go. Thanks for that.
It's been sitting on somebody's floor or they've moved out or something like that. So, yeah.
So we really is trying to move them more onto an email platform. But again, I think it just helps that we can reach out. We know that they're there. Each show we've just announced the dates for 2021, and then we let them know who's coming. And then there's some other things that we try and offer the email list sort of ahead of Facebook as well. So like I said, with our big announcement this week of our 2021 dates, that email will go out now on a Friday afternoon, and I will do a Facebook Live update on Monday to then let everyone else know as well. So there's a few other things. We send out discount vouchers to our email list. We do kind of a couple of things sort of as giveaways. So like things to do list. So what's on, or a map or things like that we send out to our email list, and we don't have that available to our social platforms. So it's sort of that way, our way of encouraging people to stay on our email list as well. And like I said, so that we know we can reach them if we need to.
Yeah. Look, I love all that. And especially like, your very first sentence, we just don't own our followers on these social media platforms. And I am just like you, I see it so often, people losing, their Instagram or their Facebook, and it's just horrendous when it happens, most certainly. And I probably deal with, I don't know, one client a month, or get approached once a month with someone who's having that heartbreak, which is really, really sad. The other thing that you mentioned was your support to your members or to your list. And I really just wanted to just touch a little bit on that, how you said that, you would send them out things for them to put on their social media, or I guess just things around that. Like, I just think that's such a great way to encourage people to post on social media to help your business, but perhaps they just don't know how to do it. So giving them that step by step, or giving them that graphic, is a really great way of helping your brand, but also encouraging them to do what you want them to do.
Yeah, it's a very symbiotic relationship. And sometimes I get frustrated when, the retailer might say, oh, there's not enough people there. It's like, well, I've done my part. I've done this, and this. Where was your part in bringing your community in as well? So, yeah, we have, artwork that's like, we'll be at the From Picture to Page show Geelong, Vines Road Community Centre. These are the dates. And then trying to have that in all the formats. So trying to have it right for Facebook, square for Instagram, and again, using hashtags as well, which is a little bit different in Facebook than it is in Instagram, but providing that information to say, these are the hashtags we're going to use, post your photos, use this hashtag, and explain to them what the benefits of using the hashtag, because it really does on Instagram allow you to cut through people with similar interests that mightn't be following you.
Yeah, no, really interesting. And I guess I just love that support that you're giving them to help them, because you've said a couple of times you're dealing with some older demographics who perhaps either aren't on Facebook, or perhaps aren't that familiar with running a business on Facebook, as opposed to just being on there and seeing their beautiful grandchild. So making it simple, superstar, is absolutely awesome. So what's next? What's 2021 look like?
Right. Well, I guess we probably should take a step back and just talk about what 2020 ended up looking like.
Oh,
So
yeah.
our first event in the year is in March in Bendigo. And this year it was on the same weekend as the Grand Prix. And we know what happened to the Grand Prix in Melbourne. It was shut down Friday. We were already in the car heading to Bendigo, and we decided to go ahead with the show. All of our retailers turned up. We did have less crafters, but that's not unexpected. This was kind of before you needed a COVID plan, but we put a cleaning plan in place. We had sanitizers. This was pre-masks as well. Can you remember?
Yeah.
So we did that. And then after that, as we headed into our next show, which is at the Pakenham at the Cardinia Cultural Centre in May, we realised that we were in trouble for that. I was heartbroken. I had the best lineup of retailers. There was a handful of people I'd been really trying to get into shows, and the venue out at Pakenham is really lovely, but it's quite constrained and we're always oversubscribed. So I've had to say no to a few people. So this year we finally, all the ducks in a row thing, and then we had to cancel it. And at the time, again, it's hard to remember what it was like back in April, May, but trying to decide whether we postponed it or cancelled it. My concern was, because we basically hold a show each quarter, if we started slipping it, again, it just makes it harder for the retailers. It makes it harder for the crafters. So we made the decision to cancel it. And what we were sort of doing in parallel, because craft is a perfect medium on video, was to do an online show. So with the help of my husband, he found something that we could use. We were all sort of set up on Macs, and how we could use, our basic video conferencing to then go out to Facebook, and we did some online shows. So the first couple were pretty shaky. I decided, rather than condensing it all in a weekend, we did 2 or 3 a week. So we sort of could spread it out. Again, we were really conscious that a lot of our retailers didn't have those facilities. So we set it up so that they could use their smartphone and using Skype, which is one of the original, video conferencing platforms. And we figured out a way how they could, because the hardest part about doing craft demonstrations, believe it or not, is actually to get the camera overhead so that you can do that above view. So we come up with a way of getting boxes and chopsticks and books so that they could put their camera down. And so that's how we started off with our first online show. We've since done 3 series of sort of long formats, which gave every retailer an hour. Part of their investment was us doing a practice run as well. So we'd get on and practice lighting and talking about, how we could do it. Because what I really wanted to do was, with all the Zoom going so crazy, was have it so that we could have a face-to-face chat. Because if you just want to watch videos, that's kind of what YouTube was for.
Yeah.
What we did that was different was have the retailers come on, and look, some didn't come on because they just could not be on video. That was just a bit overwhelming. But sometimes they got one of their team to help. And then we could have a chat, we could find out more about them, and then they could do their craft demonstration, and of course, the link that directly to their online platforms as well. And then what we did on the From Picture to Page website, on my page, every retailer has their own page, and they can, I'm in control of it, but they can tell me whatever they want. So then we could put the replay of the video, we could link directly to the products on their website that they use. So it was really a way of helping showcase what they do as well. So like I said, we did 3 long format series, and we've just finished our second weekend, and our big show was usually in October at the Sandown Raceway. So that's, for those of you who've been out there, it's a fantastic venue. I think the actual floor is about 700, 800 square meters, so a huge venue. And we had over 3,000 hours of Facebook video watched that week with our 3 days of demonstration.
Fantastic.
So it was a huge undertaking. And again, we were sort of still kind of under restrictions. So we brought in some people for me to help present, and we had, masks on when we weren't in the television studio, and we did training with them as well. And so it's been a really different way of bringing events. We decided to make it free to our crafters. So our retailers paid a fee to be part of it, and then our crafters were free. So we decided to keep that on the Facebook platform. Again, there's so many different ways that you can put paywalls in front of it, but we just felt that would be a bit complex for our crafters, and we really wanted to keep it free for them as much as possible.
Yep.
And then after we did the live recording, we then uploaded the video to YouTube. And one of the things I loved about doing it live is that it forces you just to get in there and do it. I hate video editing. I have no patience for that. So it's live, get on with it. If you've stuffed it up, just keep going. And then it was really easy to kind of do minimal editing to get it up onto YouTube, and then embed it back into our WordPress platform as well.
Yeah, right.
So that was what happened this year. So next year, 5 shows and probably some online shows in between.
Yeah, okay. So did you find the feedback from your retailers is they got some good sales from doing that?
It's been a mixed bag. Some, again, it's a very different medium. And what we found, particularly during the lockdown in Melbourne, was that our attention spans were really low. So the retailers that did really well were the ones that had kind of simple projects and focused on a small range of products. Some of them that sort of tried to do a bit too much, had different amounts of success. It really did then depend and how they followed up. But again, that was part of our coaching, was for them to go back. The Facebook events, all of their business pages were invited to co-host. We encouraged them to go back and, read the comments. And the great thing is that it becomes evergreen content. So all those videos are still sitting there on Facebook and eventually on YouTube. So people can go back and look at them at any time. So
no, I think that's like, people hated the pivot word. I personally didn't have that big of an unaffection for it. I thought I was just so grateful that people had the mindset to pivot. Like, I think we all spent time crying and in bed, most certainly towards the end of March last year or this year. Gosh, here I am even wishing it further away. But, I think we all sort of just had to pull on our big girl pants balance and use that pivot word. So I guess, congratulations. Like, that's just amazing to sort of pick up and try and offer your retailers and your crafters something a little bit different. And I think that you've probably given them the skill set that they would never ever have attempted
Yeah,
had this not have happened. So it's funny how
yeah.
things work.
It is. And look, there's definitely at least one of the businesses I know, and perhaps more, that really thanked me for giving her the confidence to step up
Mm,
her technology game and do some more videos, because it does lend itself to that. But again, what we did, and I guess that's kind of our whole business philosophy, is just to take that next little step. I guess both my husband and I are very risk averse. So it's not like we went out and borrowed a whole heap of
yeah.
money to set it up. So we started with our iPhones, and we've got Macs, like I said. So that got us so far. And then we had flickering lights. So then we had to get some lights. So then we just couldn't make the sound work. So then we had to get a microphone, and we had to get some speakers. And
Yep.
then we had got a green screen, and then we've got a webcam. And so it's kind of just grown really slowly. And sort of, again, everyone was really forgiving at the start, because everyone knew we were all scrambling and just trying to figure it out as we went. And I think that's like anything when you do it for the first time, you've just got to take that next step and just test the waters a bit. But I do think that video is fantastic. So not only do we have our Facebook page, we've got our community group, what we call the Papercraft Posse. And that's just another great place where we share our artwork. And I'm often there doing videos live, just again to check in, just to sort of let people know that we're thinking of them. Because again, our demographic is very much older and quite a high level of carers and people that identifies with a disability or a chronic illness. So there was a lot of people really scared during this pandemic, and we get that. And so it was there about, even if you don't feel like crafting, know that you're not alone, watch some videos, have a little play if you want to, or if not, just give yourself a break. So video really allowed us to connect with people like that. So it was, really about not biting off more that we could chew, but just slowly building it up and just figuring out that next problem. Like, if you see our setup now, there's no way this time last year I would have thought we'd have a full-on recording studio in the back of the factory. But we always wanted to do videos, like I said, craft really lends itself to that. And there is a skill about sort of, I guess it's similar to teaching craft classes, but even breaking it down even simpler. So when we first went online, I was doing, craft with us sessions and all sorts of tutorials, as well as the online show stuff. So after about 6 weeks, I decided I couldn't be doing like 6 videos a week. It was getting a bit out of hand. So we pulled it back down to 3, and that was manageable.
Yeah, right. And like you say, it's evergreen content now that will just sit there and, be repurposed, I'm sure, a lot of times. So, yeah, I think that's just so wonderful and such a supportive community. Yeah, I love that, people have got somewhere to go, even if they don't feel like crafting, there's still someone there, to check in on them, which I think was so, so important. But as far as being forgiving on video, I think that people will be forgiving for a long time. I think, I don't think people are going to go back to expecting, perfection in videos. I think that, they've seen enough this year to go, well, they're actually doing it and I'm not. So no judgment here.
Exactly. And, you see some of those beautiful sculptured videos on YouTube, and you just think, I just don't have the appetite to do that. I'd much rather do it live, chuck on an intro and an outro, and be done with it, move on to the next thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It makes you more human, for me anyway. Makes you more attainable, that what you're teaching me I can actually get to, rather than perfection, perhaps. Michelle, this has been such a great chat. There's so many business lessons that you have spoken about today, regardless of whether people are in retail, service-based, crafters or not crafters. There is just so many pieces of gold. So I can't thank you enough for coming on and chatting to us. If anyone wants to touch base with you, or if they're super excited because I've had a craft person on, how are they best to get in contact with you?
Find us. So in the World Wide Web, you can find our events at FromPictureToPageAndBeyond.com.au, and that lists all of our shows, and now all the dates are out for 2021. More on the craft side, you can find me at mixedmediaart.net, and of course you can find me at the same at Facebook as well, From Picture to Page Papercraft shows and creating mixed media art. So you'll definitely find me there.
Beautiful. I will have all those links in the show notes as well. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on. Super appreciate it. Yeah, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Excellent. Thanks, Jen. You too.
I really hope you enjoyed that interview. I loved her story, and especially her story from last year, from 2020, and how they did things differently. She certainly managed to showcase her problem-solving skills as an engineer into her craft pivoting business of 2020. If you have any questions or queries, I'd love you to jump into the Like-Minded Business Owners group. If you haven't joined that one yet, then jump over to Facebook and search Like-Minded Business Owners. Michelle is actually a member of that group. So if you have any questions for Michelle, please reach out in that group. I'm sure she would love to answer any of your questions that might have come up from this interview. Of course, all Michelle's links will be in the show notes at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/111. So 111. All her links will be in there if you want to connect with her further. But she's certainly in the Like-Minded Business Owners group, so you can always tag her in there and ask any questions. But that's it for episode 111. I will be back next Thursday for 112, and I really look forward to chatting with you then. But let's connect between now and then. I'd love to connect with you on obviously my Facebook group, or even at on Instagram at social media. No, that's not my handle. Be really good if I knew my own Instagram handle, wouldn't it? At Small Business Made Simple is my Instagram handle. Send me a DM over there. I'd love to hear from you. If you're enjoying this podcast, then please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and maybe share it with another superstar business owner who might be doing that daily grind and would really appreciate someone making their business life a little bit simpler. If you have an extra 20 seconds in your life, a rating and a review would be so cool, especially if you listen in Apple Podcasts. All you need to do is scroll all the way past my episodes and eventually you will come to the bit where you can leave a rating and a review. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. But as usual, my small business peeps, as my opening song says, don't forget, there is no point in dreaming small.
Say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are.